Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek 4 is just like his unmade James Bond movie. Quentin Tarantino's abandoned plan to direct a James Bond movie resembles the Star Trek 4 idea he also walked away from. The Academy Award-winning writer and director is a genre film aficionado who grew up loving James Bond and Star Trek, two properties that launched as movies and a TV series, respectively, in the 1960s. It's no surprise that Tarantino tried his hand at developing both a Bond movie and a Star Trek movie, although neither came to fruition. Quentin Tarantino's abandoned plan to direct a James Bond movie resembles the Star Trek 4 idea he also walked away from. The Academy Award-winning writer and director is a genre film aficionado who grew up loving James Bond and Star Trek, two properties that launched as movies and a TV series, respectively, in the 1960s. It's no surprise that Tarantino tried his hand at developing both a Bond movie and a Star Trek movie, although neither came to fruition. As explained by Bullets and Blockbusters, Quentin Tarantino wanted to direct Casino Royale before the 2006 James Bond reboot starring Daniel Craig and directed by Martin Campbell. However, Tarantino wanted his Casino Royale to star Pierce Brosnan, whose last 007 film was 2002's Die Another Day. Quentin, coming off Kill Bill, intended to bring back Brosnan as 007 and set Casino Royale in the 1960s. However, Eon Productions turned down Tarantino's Casino Royale idea and rebooted James Bond with Daniel Craig. Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek 4 is like his unmade James Bond movie. Quentin Tarantino's Casino Royale idea was echoed over a decade later when the director mounted his version of Star Trek 4. Tarantino's Casino Royale set in the 1960s sounds similar to his plan for Star Trek 4 to be a remake of A Piece of the Action, an episode of Star Trek, the original series that originally aired in 1968. Tarantino's concepts for James Bond and Star Trek are both throwbacks to the 60s. However, Tarantino wanted to film his Casino Royale in black and white, while Quentin's gangster Star Trek 4 movie would presumably have been in color. Quentin Tarantino came of age loving genre movies and TV shows from the 1960s and 1970s, as evidenced by his nostalgic 2019 hit, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Quentin's preferred Star Trek is Captain Kirk William Shatner and Mr. Spock's Leonard Nimoy set aboard the Starship Enterprise. However, Tarantino loved J.J. Abrams' Star Trek 2009 and felt Chris Pine perfectly embodied Shatner as Captain Kirk. Similarly, Tarantino was enamored with Pierce Brosnan 007, believing him to be the best James Bond. When Quentin Tarantino flirted with Star Trek, fans were both excited and baffled. Could the king of grindhouse violence, witty dialogue, and cinematic homage actually sit in the captain's chair of a venerable sci-fi franchise? As it turns out, Tarantino's Star Trek 4 was never meant to be conventional. And that's exactly why it resembled his other unrealized cinematic dream, a James Bond movie. Both projects, his Star Trek 4 pitch and the mysterious Bond concept, shared a pulpy, revisionist DNA. Tarantino didn't want to play by modern rules. His vision for 007 wasn't a Daniel Craig-style gritty reboot. He wanted a period piece set in the Cold War era, directly adapting Casino Royale as a stylish spy noir thriller. It would have been retro, sleek, and unapologetically adult. His Star Trek had a similar idea. Rather than updating the franchise with sleek ships and epic-scale space battles, Tarantino reportedly pitched a more grounded story, set in a gangster-style setting, inspired by the TOS episode, A Piece of the Action. That episode featured the Enterprise crew encountering a planet stuck in a 1920s gangster culture. Tarantino saw the potential to turn that campy classic into a bloody, dialogue-heavy crime drama. Think Pulp Fiction in spacesuits. Just like his Bond idea, Tarantino's Trek wasn't about rebooting. It was about remixing. It would have stood apart from J.J. Abrams' lens flare-filled reimaginings, offering something gritty, violent, and almost certainly R-rated. And like his Bond project, it was ultimately too out of step with the franchise's forward-facing tone to get made. Both ideas show what Tarantino loves most, taking iconic cinematic brands and warping them through his obsessive, referential lens. He doesn't want to just play in existing franchises. He wants to twist them into something bold and new. In the end, Star Trek 4 and the unmade Bond film were perfect Tarantino thought experiments. Wild, imaginative, and perhaps best left to our imaginations. Still, if either had happened, they would have been cinematic anomalies, genre classics dressed in pop culture cosplay. And that's exactly why fans still talk about them. Because in some alternate timeline, Quentin Tarantino beamed up 007 for one last mission on the final frontier.